More allegations on Capitol Hill, with more women accusing Al Franken of sexual misconduct. Now, the senator issuing this statement to the Minnesota Star Tribune. It reads, "I've met tens of thousands of people and taken thousands of photographs, often in crowded and chaotic situations. I'm a warm person. I hug people. I've learned from recent stories that in some of those encounters, I crossed a line for some women, and I know that any number is too many." Well, Fox News media analyst Howard Kurtz is live in Washington. Howard, nice to see you. You know, we've all met people who think that they're charming and maybe are a little bit too comfortable in those situations. But Al Franken's accused of groping women, grabbing them by the rear end. What do you think about this apology?
Well, the fact that it's his third apology tells you that he is still under siege, politically speaking. It's an improvement on the first two, but it's still inadequate because he acts like he's just an overenthusiastic hugger rather than somebody who's accused in multiple instances now of grabbing women's butts. And I think that Franken has been in the bunker. He's staying out of public view, hoping that this blows over. But in this kind of overheated media environment, that rarely works. And maybe that's why we've just gotten word that Senator Franken will speak to the media on Sunday.
Well, we will be waiting for that. You know, Paul Kane in the Washington Post wrote an article suggesting that politicians these days are basically having their staffers issue statements. They're sort of keeping quiet, keeping their heads down, hoping that things will blow over. So I want to ask you, what plays better for people who are in politics or people who are in the public domain? Is it better to keep your head down and wait for it to pass, or is it better to get out in front of it?
Well, if it's a really serious allegation or series of allegations, it's better to get in front of it. It's better to show your contrition on camera, not hiding behind a statement that's put out by strategists and carefully crafted by publicists. And we see this again and again now. Roy Moore, the Alabama Senate candidate, he hasn't spoken to any journalist since he had that radio conversation with Sean Hannity. There are twice as many accusers now of the former judge. John Conyers, who settled the congressman who settled a wrongful termination suit by a former staffer that includes allegations of sexual harassment, $27,000. He hasn't spoken to anybody. And I think, and the same thing with Charlie Rose, you know, who's been dropped by CBS and PBS and Bloomberg. He hasn't given any interviews. It gives the impression that they can't answer journalist questions, or they don't want to, or they have something to hide.
Well, I want to talk about some of the people you just mentioned. For example, Roy Moore. Okay, so President Trump and Kellyanne Conway have basically, when talking about the election, said, you know, don't focus on these allegations, which Roy Moore has not admitted to. They basically said, look, focus on the policies here, what your constituents, what you need as constituents. So I guess my question is, do people in politics get a pass because of what constituents need from them?
Well, it depends on the politician in question and the seriousness of the allegations. Now, certainly, of course, Roy Moore accused by 9 different women of both sexual harassment and sexual assault, would like to make this about the issues. He doesn't have to talk about that. That's a pretty common political tactic. He's chosen to run against the media, particularly the Washington Post, which has reported many of these allegations. But the fact is, some of these women have talked to Alabama journalists as well. You know, basically, a politician who doesn't want to talk about the thing, the allegation, the charge, the thing he's most vulnerable on, tries to change the subject, tries to say we got to get back to the real issues. In this particular case in Alabama, this wouldn't even be a competitive contest were it not for these accusations. And now it's a tight race.
In terms of constituents and how they take these things into account when they vote, is there a difference between Democrats and Republicans?
I'm not sure that's the case. I think in this current environment, we have both Democrats and Republicans accused of, at the very least, inappropriate behavior. I think it matters. I mean, a lot of Alabama Republicans are very loyal to Roy Moore. They have known him for decades. They say this is just the big bad media, that these allegations are almost 4 decades old. So that helps him in a way. At the same time, Al Franken, fortunately for him, isn't up for another 4 years by the time he has to run. Maybe this will all have blown over. But he's under a lot of pressure now, including from some liberal commentators who say he should resign. A year ago, if this had happened, it would have been a huge embarrassment, but I don't know that it would have reached the point of people demanding Senator Franken's resignation.
Well, we will all be watching to see how this plays out. Howard Kurtz, thank you.
Great to see you.